Ah. Oh. There we go.
Hi.
Let's also.
Hey, y'all.
Let's see where we're changing the name to on the screen. Oh, here. Rename.
Thanks so much for the kind words.
Oh my gosh, Natalie. Listen, I was cracking up at that counselor. Like, because I'm like, oh my gosh, we get such a bad reputation.
Yeah.
Because we're so kooky. But he's so smart. Like, you know, like he like front loads. Like it was, I'm sorry. The whole time I'm like.
We tried to add some comedy because of the subject matter.
It was brilliant.
Aww.
Thank you so much.
I'm like, and I'm sitting here, I'm watching it and I'm like, this guy is so great. And then her little paper spiders out of the little cups. I don't know, y'all. Like, and then the fact that she saw, I don't know. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to like pre-say all the things that I want to say here. But as somebody that doesn't, I'm pulling up my questions here because I want to make sure that I don't lose those. It was so great because I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
You think one thing.
Uh-huh.
Do you keep in touch with anybody that you cast in the film?
Yeah, actually, yeah, and most of the actors. I mean, everyone lives in different places. Actually, surprisingly, this time mostly not in LA, in New York, or Stefania, our lead actress, is now in New Zealand. But through emails and occasional calls, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well,
we want to like recast them in our movies because they're so good.
We were really lucky. Yeah. We have really, really good actors.
It looks like they just played so well off of each other, and it just was so. It's so I shouldn't like the last person that should be like critiquing a film.
Why? No, it's meant for like, it's not meant for filmmakers. Like all of our friends are filmmakers and we're like, we want this to get out to like.
Yeah, we actually care a lot more that it would reach people who care about mental health than anything else. It's something that obviously we're really passionate about. So.
Do you have anything for me that you want to make sure that I hit on as we launch this talk?
Nothing special.
Okay.
I guess when what do you think that we'll end up doing some screening in any shape or form? Okay. And do you think they will do that through a Zoom webinar or just let people know about the Amazon link?
I think I would love to see it offered as a Zoom. I would love to see a way for our community to gather, even if that's just virtually. Because then with that discussion guide that's posted on the NAMI national page, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. You know, Greater Houston is just an affiliate of that. And so I love an idea of how can we break things down on a micro level, saying that the film is macro, and then how does that dissipate into our lives? What things did we see and hear in the movie that like, were we so judgmental of her? Because we're just like, lady, or we were like, oh my gosh, I can empathize with that because I feel that way too. And then having like a heart check for ourselves. That would be my ultimate goal with that, is allowing a community, because then I think that's like the first of concentric ripples after the fact, because then you interact with somebody who is in a mental health crisis. Are you kinder and more compassionate now as a result of this movie because you've seen?
Yes, our chairs are squeaking.
Oh, I don't hear it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we hope. We hope that even if somebody who's not going through it personally, they know somebody, even with Alzheimer's or dementia or schizophrenia, any kind of mental health issue, they can kind of grow in empathy and relate to this more.
Right.
And I think we did too in the process of writing. Sure. In the process of opening up about it and hearing from other people who are going through things, and suddenly you realize that this means so much more to people, even more than
I'm saving my words. I don't want to
know. I'm like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna keep talking about. So here's the thing that you will find about this is a lot of it will be viewed retroactively. And so just because you may not have a full Zoom, like we may have a full house here, after the fact is where kind of some of that engagement will come. So I don't know if you're following our Instagram page.
We are.
people will either submit questions as it's streamed there. And so I may pop over and say, hey, somebody on Facebook has this question. Sure. Conversely, within the Zoom, they may as well. So we can anticipate all day long where the dialogue will go. However, and I think that's always the fun piece too, is like, I hadn't considered that. So it'll be really interesting. So anyways, all of that to say, if you go back and you see that there's like a specific question to you, feel free to answer that. I don't know if you're on.
Sure. Where do we see? Is there like a chat box or would it come up here, or we have to log in through?
On the Zoom, I don't know if I see it because I'm the host, or if they send it to everybody, if you'll be able to see that too. But
actually,
on Facebook,
even though we have an Instagram page, we're not.
We're like 80. We're 80 years old when it comes to technology.
So I mean, so if you see it and you'd like to read it to us, that may be best.
Okay.
I don't trust myself to.
Unless it comes up here on this, then we can.
I don't think they would come up on Zoom. You would probably come up on Instagram, but I haven't done those live things. I haven't done any Instagram live before, so I'm not sure how.
Oh boy. We'll get you on an Instagram live. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and launch us over. If you go, it's NAMI Greater Houston is the Facebook page. So I'm going to have both of them up at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and click us over there. And then in case you're wondering, INON and Natalie, HAMPANIER.
Okay, I'm on the page.
All right, share on your own timeline. Nope, share on the page.
Questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's best if you see something, feel free to read to us. I don't trust our tech savviness enough to.
You guys are great. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Okay. Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Elizabeth Lewis, and I'm the Director of Communications for NAMI Greater Houston. And we are joined today by some incredible individuals who made an even, I don't want to say a more incredible movie, because I don't want to take away from how awesome you are. Would you guys be so kind as to introduce yourselves so we can get started on all things Paper Spiders?
Hi, I'm Natalie Champagnier, and this is my husband, Ian Champagnier. We wrote the movie together, and Ian directed it.
The movie is Paper Spiders. It tells a story for those of you who haven't had a chance to watch it yet. We haven't organized the screening event yet, but for those of you who haven't had a chance to watch about it or didn't hear about it, it's a movie about a daughter trying to help her mother cope with mental health challenges and trying to live her own life, going through her high school senior year as her mother's paranoid delusions spiral out of control. Really a movie about unconditional love and trying to support someone you love through a mental health crisis when you don't always have the tools and are able to really help them, but you really care to and try.
Yeah, and we got connected. Y'all had reached out to our affiliate, to our NAMI affiliate. And so we connected a couple of weeks ago, and then I just watched the film, and I was telling them just a second ago, I'm not like a movie watcher, and this thing sucked me in. Like, as a social worker and as somebody that works in a nonprofit, it is always so awesome to me to see just how multifaceted mental health is, and how you guys, I told you earlier, like my favorite part of the movie is this counselor and how great he is. And you guys will have to watch it. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but how great he navigates his role in working with youth and working with adolescents. And you guys really hit the nail on the head with that. And I just cannot commend you enough, just on a personal level, for one, how you cast that, and then two, how you portrayed that, and then the ongoing crisis. Like what you had said really is so true, in that just an unconditional love of somebody that's going through something that maybe you don't understand. So would you both be willing to share a little bit about the catalyst for making this movie and what the after effects have been so far?
Sure. Yeah. I'm. It's kind of unfortunate. I'm sad to say that it's based on a true story, or inspired at least by my relationship with my mom and what we went through. She was suffering from delusional disorder, which is like paranoia, the persecutory type, and she felt that a neighbor was stalking her. And we, as writers, we process, the things that we care about most, and we really cared about this issue, and we put it on paper. It's a piece of our hearts. We honestly didn't think that it would get made, just because we have so many projects that are very Hollywood and commercial, and those don't get made. And so we kind of freely wrote everything, and then it did get made, and people started approaching us, telling us, we weren't planning on telling anybody that it's based on a true story, because it's very personal, and when you're going through something like that, it's scary to open up. But then people were approaching us saying, is this based on a true story? It feels really real, and I know somebody who is going through something similar. And then we kind of realized, after getting so many of those kinds of comments, that we kind of need to be honest about it and just tell people that it is, and it's hopefully helping people, because we were so secretive about it. We didn't get help, and we didn't really I guess maximize the potential of intervention. And if we can help others through this movie feel less alone, then to me that's a success.
And Natalie's mother, I think it's important to say, she was a really wonderful woman. Yes. She was loving and kind and sweet and funny and had a great sense of humor, and I would say in every regard she was wonderful. Mm-hmm. But specifically when it came to her paranoid delusions, she was living in a nightmare that we could not wake her up from.
Right.
She believed that she was being stalked by a neighbor and harassed by a neighbor, and no matter what we did to try to convince her that maybe she's misinterpreting noises and experiences, it didn't help. And I should also probably mention that Natalie is a mental health professional herself. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. And so she actually, unlike the character in the movie, was a teenager who doesn't really have experience with this. She knew very quickly, she realized that these are classic symptoms of delusional disorder, persecutory type, what's most commonly known as paranoia. But knowing the problem doesn't necessarily mean that you can treat it. And one of the things that are hardest about delusional disorder is that people are not aware of that they have a problem. So obviously, with so many other mental health challenges, people who are depressed usually are aware that they're depressed. People who have anxiety are aware of it. People who are paranoid almost always believe that the problem is real, and it's very hard to convince them otherwise. And as a mental health professional, Natalie knew that you can't really tackle it head on. So for the longest time, we tried to just suggest that maybe she's misinterpreting noises, and it didn't help, and their relationship suffered as a result. And at some point, we just said, listen, we love you, but we think that there's a problem and you need help. And sadly, their relationship really suffered as a result. So
at first we were kind of enabling it. I mean, it's kind of like you lose and you lose. We were enabling it by not confronting her, but then when we after years decided to confront her, that made things worse as well. And it did get, I will say, it did get better towards the end, but it would go like this, like it would just, she was fine in every other aspect of her life, but whenever we would talk about the neighbor or anything like that, as often with delusional disorder, they will spiral out of control. And it's very specific. It's like a very specific.
Yeah. So then, when it came down, we started discussing a few years ago, what if we turned that story that was so close to our hearts into a script? And as Natalie said, we weren't planning to tell people that it's inspired by truth. But as soon as we started sharing it, people started opening up to us about their personal problems and their challenges with, either their own mental health struggles or supporting loved ones with different problems, even different ones that are not paranoia, be it addictions or whatnot. And we just realized how relatable the story is and how many people are going through something that, or trying to support someone who's going through something. And then we started opening up to them, and then we realized we should really be talking about this more openly and hopefully help break the stigma that is so unnecessarily attached to mental illness.
Yeah, and when you guys created the discussion guide, and we talked about this just before we went live, on the NAMI National site, there is a post-viewing discussion guide. And we had talked about having a screening for NAMI Greater Houston supporters. And so we'll get into that after I say, what you have done is facilitated a conversation that so many of us can now apply to our lives, whether or not we're living with or love somebody who is dealing with that specific mental illness. It translates in so many ways to be able to not always have to take on the role of like a savior complex, but it's just loving and it's encouraging and it's supporting something maybe you don't even understand. And you portrayed that so beautifully in the film, and I imagine you lived it out even better. As you thought about approaching NAMI, what was that for you guys? Like, why this organization?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that NAMI, is not only the largest mental health organization in the country, but also the fact that it focuses so much on family and on the support system and on storytelling and about sharing stories. To us, that was so meaningful because, I mean, obviously, naturally, you make a movie, you want to reach a wide audience, as wide as possible, but also it was specifically very important for us to reach people who have experienced different mental health struggles or have supported other people, loved ones who were dealing with mental health struggles, really with the hope of, first of all, starting a conversation or contributing even a little bit to private public conversations about the need to support people who are dealing with mental health challenges. And also so that people who watch this, if they feel alone going through this, and I feel like most people are, whatever they're dealing with, you tend to kind of feel alone in your personal struggles. I think that when you see those struggles reflected on screen, you feel less alone. And that was really our goal. We hoped, I think that you said that as you were going through it, you wished you had seen.
I totally wish I would have seen this kind of movie when I was going through it, because especially when you don't talk about it, you feel like you're the only one going through it. And I'm sure that's true with like other, kind of disorders too. And like what I learned personally from this is just be honest and open up, and you'll be surprised at how many other people can relate, and whatever they're going through, because it's always something. They can be touched by that, and they can help you, and you can help them by sharing. Yeah. So a lot of people don't have families that are supportive, and even if they do, it's hard, so I feel like NAMI is so useful for those people that don't have like a large support system or somebody that they can really rely on or talk to.
Yeah.
And oh no, go ahead.
Oh no, I want to say we're actually very fortunate that when we premiered the film at Dances with Films, Katrina Gay, the national director of NAMI, joined our premiere panel to talk about it, and because she embraced the film and started and shared her insights and resources, that we realized how valuable it is to have NAMI affiliate heads join the conversation. So as we played regional film festivals, we would invite the heads of NAMI affiliates to join the conversation in our Q&As and talk about it and really just have a conversation. And we were really happy that beyond just having a conversation about the aesthetics of the movie or the film experience, the actors, etc., production, we're really able to have a more meaningful conversation about mental health. And that's really, to us was most gratifying to feel like maybe the movie can actually, be significant to those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I would be interested to know, as you guys went through the filming journey of it, Natalie having lived it on a personal level, you just as a supportive partner and spouse in it, did you find that there were times through the process or afterwards that you needed to take your own step back and say, okay, I need my own mental health to take care of me for a little bit, maybe more or less than you thought that you might in the process?
I honestly don't think we could have written this movie when it was going on.
Right.
We were too in it, and you're not thinking of who's thinking about writing a movie or even writing it down when you're in it. Like this consumed every hour of my day. Like I would get text messages from my mom and phone calls, and we also had a very close relationship, so we would just talk about everything normally, but it was also a lot about the neighbor and helping her and moving and just moving from place to place and supporting her survival in this false reality. And it just took so much, energy. So when we were in it, I don't think we could have written it. So sadly, my mom passed away 5 years ago from an unrelated condition, but she was also living with a lot of stress. So
sure.
It's hard to know. And then processing that, which was, so difficult. I think just like stepping away and just putting like your feelings on paper afterwards and the story that you went through in your life, because I'm a writer and I'm also a marriage and family therapist, so I constantly like am interested naturally in stories that deal with mental health and the mind. But when it's your own story, this is like a diary, and like I said,
right.
I don't think that it would get made. Like a lot of the scenes are just like rehashing what happened. But
which was, I think, therapeutic. I
Yeah.
think that in a sense, maybe the process of writing it for us was therapeutic the way that it would be for someone who's not a filmmaker to
Right.
share their story with other people for the first time, and then get to hear back. And fortunately, we've gotten to connect with so many people during development and production, and then post production, and then with audiences about it. The process of constantly discussing it, I think, was therapeutic, and it's probably but most people don't get to make a movie about what they're going through. So I think that just being able to share your story and hear from other people how they relate to your story is extremely valuable.
I want to pivot to some of the questions that I had sent you prior to this, which was one of the first ones was, how do you think that the community should get involved in advocating for mental health? Because we don't all have the opportunity to make a film, or maybe we just don't want to. We want to share it differently. What are some bits of advice for just kind of us everyday individuals to advocate and share our stories in a really effective way?
Well, I think that the obvious is just the resources that NAMI provides and different NAMI affiliates are incredibly helpful. And I wish, even though, again, Natalie herself is a mental health professional, but if we had been more aware of the resources that NAMI offered at the time, we'd like to think that we'd be able to do things better. So I think that just by talking to other people and opening up about it, you're able to hear from other people what resources may have helped them. And
Right.
then, and then hopefully those resources would be valuable to you. So I think that that's really just the power of talking about it and learning what resources are available in every community. And I think,
No, go ahead.
oh no, so as simple as it is to recognize this, very often when you're going through a mental health journey, you're so alone in it and so focused on on trying to find some immediate solution that I think that many people fail to realize the importance of the community as a support system. And in the movie we make a point of how important a support system is, especially when it comes to family and a loved one supporting people, but also that loved one, that caretaker also very often is dealing with a burden that they don't necessarily have the tools to handle. And that's also something where community and the resources the community offers are invaluable.
And I think in general, we want to feel like we can fix this. We can do this on our own. We don't need to reach out. This is personal, or I can do this. I mean, this is my family, but that's actually harder when it's your family. Like you keep saying I'm a mental health professional, but it's even harder, I think, to treat family, So it doesn't matter, I think, how you may be with other clients, how good you are, how effective you are, but when it comes to your own family or even yourself, I think it's so useful to hear outside opinions and support groups, things like that, to reach out, and you can't always fix the problems, that you have in your life.
Yeah. And sometimes there's just such a power in saying the thing, like giving yourself permission to say, oh, there's this ugliness that I feel, or when I'm with my mom and she's experiencing X, Y, and Z, it affects me this way, and taking the guilt and shame out of feeling how we feel and not stuffing, because I think eventually that just erupts anyways. And then we have a worse reaction than just verbalizing. And so I think you're absolutely right.
And then also, I think a lot of the times it's not the person's fault. It's not that it's like they're difficult or they have a problem or they're mentally ill. It's the illness. It's not them. So like my mom, for example, was just amazing, caring, loving, kind in every aspect. And what was her towards, the end of her life was the illness that took over. So and that's like, I think differentiating between, it's not a personal thing. It's like the illness. Cause like we have a line in the movie that if you have diabetes or cancer, it's not your fault, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Same with mental illness.
Right. And there's, did you want to say something?
No, exactly that. Just the understanding that in many ways, and our society is getting better at this, but I think that there's still a ways to go, where there should be enough of an understanding that mental health, just like other health issues, there are conditions that need to be treated, even if sometimes the treatment is not yet available, or maybe medicine is not helpful or effective yet. Even they're recognizing there's a condition and separating the condition from the person and not assigning blame and fault,
Right.
is extremely important, because also when there is more blame and fault, it contributes to isolation, the very opposite of having a community support. It just makes people, be alone in their misery, and usually it hurts.
Yeah. I had a conversation, to your point. I'm really fortunate to have a weekly conversation with a friend of mine who just battles schizophrenia in the best way that he can. And he had described to me, much like what you're saying and what was said in the movie, that it's just almost like it looks like you have two legs when you're trying to climb a hill. And everybody just expects you to be able to do and perform, because from the outside looking in, most individuals don't present in a physical way their internal suffering. And he's like, I just wish that people knew that I need like a cane sometimes to walk, or that I need just some assistance. And there's nothing wrong with that. You wouldn't deny treatment to a cancer patient. Why would we deny treatment or help or empathy to somebody experiencing mental health or having a different response to a crisis than we would have? We may all experience the same event. Natalie, you may come out of it very depressed. I may be not as affected by it, but that doesn't mean that you are weaker because you didn't pick yourself up by your bootstraps and just move on. Your movie really fostered for me just a broader way to think about how do I react in situations, subconsciously or not, that I don't understand, and giving pause to seeing the humanity in the person versus the behavior of the person. Does that make sense?
Of course,
Absolutely.
yes.
And go ahead.
No, I love that example that your friend gave, because not being able to see it from the outside and just appearing normal. And that's like, I feel like gosh, I wish I could have put that in the movie. I feel like that's so true though, to like what the stigma, that people have for mental illness, and just highlighting it like that.
And how important growing in empathy is. And it was really also something that we wanted the story to be about. There's a scene in the movie, not spoiling much to anyone who hasn't watched it yet. There's a scene in the movie where the daughter is just trying to like find solace and escape from everything. Goes to a party and decides to try some weed and becomes paranoid. And the reason and has a very difficult night of mental anguish. And the reason that we put that in the movie is because we wanted the daughter for one night to be in the shoes of the mother and see what it feels like to have paranoia and mental anguish, and now being able to trust your own mind and what you're seeing and thinking. And because the audience gets to mostly see the story through her eyes, it was really important for us for her journey to be one of growing in empathy. And then she comes home after having a fight with her mom and hugs her. And we were really hoping that other people who were watching the movie whose lives may have not been touched by mental health, challenges, would really think about, would have greater empathy toward other people who may be going through things that are, like you said, invisible. It's not someone's in a wheelchair, that there's a problem, but the problems of the mind are always invisible. And just recognize if you never really know what someone's journey is. So less judgment and more empathy are extremely important.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that was really great within the movie, that she is a teenager. She is still trying to figure herself out, and coming to, with this boy that is pursuing her, and then also just excelling in school, and like all of these things that she is juggling well, I think. And then having this mother that she wants to love and she wants to support, and she's not sure, do I acknowledge what my mom is saying is true, and that back and forth of, am I doing more harm than good by acknowledging it, or do we need to have that intervention that says, no, actually the delusions are not factual, they're not reality. What was the decision? And I know that this was based off of your life. Is that a piece that is true of your story, where there was the sit down conversation with the counselor and with somebody saying, hey, here's kind of all the criteria for a delusion disorder, or what was that like for your life?
I kind of feel like before we even wrote the movie, we put so much time and energy and research, and also talking to therapists and family therapy, that we knew that it was, that this was what she had,
Sure.
delusional disorder, and we've had.
You actually diagnosed it very quickly yourself.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly. But then when I look back, the hindsight is of 2020. Yeah, I could see from like a very early age there were little symptoms that it got progressively worse as she.
Okay, yeah. That was going to be one of my questions was
Yeah.
did it start and then
Only looking back in my childhood, I could see, oh, okay, that was like a little thing, like she thought she was being followed, but it was just like little things that you just brush off.
Sure.
Even at some point, even when it was like starting, you so want to, when you love somebody, you so want to believe they're right. And
Yeah.
so want us to believe maybe somebody's following her, and that's, maybe it's not all in her head, and so you start to question your own sanity, like, maybe, can it please be true, can you be on the roof? But just the claims started to get more and more extreme, that I mean, it was clear that there was just a fantasy that I had, like, oh, maybe it's true, but it was just clear that this is it's not only delusional disorder, but it's getting worse, and the paranoia is really affecting, like, I knew all of the things that's affecting her daily life and their function,
Right.
her dating life, and her job, and, like, kind of, mental illness does it starts to take over, and it was so sad because this was her reality, and how do you tell somebody you're living in a fake reality? It's virtually impossible.
But I think that you did, if I remember correctly, at the time when we were going through it, I think that you did consult with the DSM. I think if you're looking at different disorders, that because many different conditions have an aspect of paranoia to them, but there's differential diagnosis, and they're not quite, and they're different. And I think that you're looking at it as a professional, seeing which one is fits, and what behaviors really fit the criteria of a certain condition.
Because there's overlap. There's a lot of overlap with the other disorders. And go ahead.
No, but so even though the diagnosis actually came from you, you did, especially being a family member and knowing that you can't quite treat your own family, you did reach out to other mental health professionals, and we even tried to facilitate, a session, with a counselor, under the guise of family therapy. Not tackling this head on, because when you're
right.
with resistance, we're just talking about, family stuff and trying to introduce that kind of like through the back door, and that kind of backfired as well. As
the whole thing got flipped. Yeah. The whole session got flipped, and it's like, wait, we're not here for me. No. It kind of goes to show when you have plans, or like try to, you don't tackle something head on, which own cons too that you tackle head on, but when you try, in a very sly way to go through it, it didn't. She was very savvy, and she kind of knew, kind of caught on, and it ended up getting flipped, and so a lot of the characters in the movie, especially the therapist, are just combinations based off of combinations of people that we know. Yeah.
Also, we should probably mention that while in the story the daughter is supporting the mother, is a teenager going through her senior year. In reality, first of all, this was in a way a lifelong experience for Natalie. I mean, in hindsight, she could tell even about experiences in childhood that in hindsight she realized had to do with, possibly paranoid delusions. But most of it, most of what we see that is similar to what happens in the movie, actually to Natalie, happened later in life, when she was already married and had me and kids, and was a mental health professional herself. So she, unlike the character in the movie who, wasn't a mental health professional and was a teenager dealing with it on her own, Natalie did have a knowledge of mental health issues, and did have more of a support system. Yeah, but still, so much of what we see in the movie is variations on what happened in real life. And even as a mental health professional, I think that it is and was very hard to help someone who has a condition where there's no insight into the fact that there's a problem. That was a challenge, as we're seeing it.
I love that what you painted was this picture of like a mental health toolbox of whenever she's speaking, I believe it's in the treatment center, and she's like, the ones that have the most success are the ones with the biggest support system. And so, yes, we have that, but we also have medication, but we also have mental health professional resources. And you really painted a great holistic view of what mental health care looks like. Because I think if you remove one or the other, and sometimes there is not a place for medicine, or there is, maybe you have gone through therapy and maybe we're okay right now and we can take a break for a season. That is probably one of my favorite things that you did, was highlight the fact that it is multifaceted and that each piece plays a part. And we don't put all of our eggs in one basket where we assume there's going to be a magic pill and suddenly everything is great. Yes. Or if I'm just nice enough to you, then you'll feel better. You know what I mean?
And I think a family member, we shared it with a family member at some point when it got to be a lot, you know, and so we, I remember them saying, well, she just needs pills. It's like, she just take pills and then like, that could be fine. And it was like the understanding, well, okay, that's not going to solve it. And it needs to be therapy. But then in order to get somebody to get therapy and support groups, they need to have that desire to want to change. And how do you want to change if you don't even think you have a problem?
Yeah.
So it's this complex, you know, like you said, holistic view of all of the things that can really help. And it's not also, even, we're not trying to suggest in the movie that everything, you know, you, even if you do all those things, it's going to be, you know,
right,
to the skies from then on. It's always probably going to be a battle, as is like addiction, alcoholism, and all of that stuff.
Sure.
You can at least lead to hope and function, and you can function hopefully a normal life if you make some of those changes.
As you have heard stories from individuals after the fact, which I'm sure there have been many, is there one that maybe sticks out to you where you're like, okay, we did a thing and the impact is just like, it just hits your heart and you're like, okay, like yes. it was worth it.
We've done some interviews where I feel like I have a disorder where I start, if somebody is crying or opening up, it's very hard for me to like keep a straight face. And there was just one, you know, person who it was just, this was like her story, and she broke down, and it's so touching. It's so, when you, this movie in a way is made for people that can be touched in that kind of way, that relate to it on a personal level. And that's kind of the most impactful when you really feel like you reach somebody.
And we're fortunate, maybe is the wrong word, but we're fortunate to actually hear back from a lot of people who said, this is my story. This is what I went through, you know, with a parent, with a sibling, with a son, with a husband, and really, and I think that all of those people felt very grateful to see their story reflected on screen. So, and it was very gratifying to us, as sad as it is to hear that other people have gone through something similar, to know that people found it valuable, people who were going through something.
And I think it was surprising that it was switched a lot of the times. Like in our movie, it's the daughter trying to kind of save her mom and help her mom. And then someone opened up where it was a parent trying to save their child. And so it just crosses boundaries, or a wife trying to save her husband in a way, you know, who had like similar symptoms. The movie, and it's just, when you see that it can resonate with people that even are going through different situations, that to us I think is the most.
And even people, I mean, many people actually said, wow, this is so similar to what I was going through with, you know, even the paranoia. But even people who have never, you know, dealt with any loved one who suffered from paranoia or from something similar, or even from mental health issues, I think that just the story of what do you do when you have a loved one who has any kind of a problem that is beyond your control, and you're struggling to help them and you feel like you can't. That narrative to us was really compelling. So many people are trying to help, you know, loved ones with addictions, loved ones with even medical challenges that are not mental health related, but still, you know, they become a caretaker, and you know, and their lives change as a result. And very often there's a burden associated with it. And very often they feel like they're you know, collapsing under the weight of a burden that they're not prepared to carry. So we felt like that you know, journey was also compelling to other people, and other people came back to us saying, you know, this is very much like what I was going through.
One of the things that I love about y'all is that you supported your wife in helping tell her story, and you didn't have to have lived it as long as she did, but you believed in her enough and you cared about her enough, and so by default you provided like safety and security for her, And oftentimes, sometimes I feel like maybe the focus is on the individual who's dealing with the mental health thing, and we forget the loved ones that are supporting the person going through it. Natalie, would you share and both of your perspectives on what that was like for your relationship to be able to have it? It really was intimacy is by default what that kind of pairs down to, what that was like for y'all.
I honestly can't even imagine how I would have coped really if I didn't have that. Like it really can. I almost feel like on some level it's super hard super hard for the person going through it because they're suffering, they're feeling persecuted. But it's no less hard, if not harder, for the person who's trying to help them. My mom was like coping in her own way and finding solutions and feeling at peace when she would, have certain interventions of her own, like even living in her car, things like that. Okay, at least she was protecting herself. But watching that person fall apart is devastating. Watching your loved one, they almost take over them. So I don't know. Like I mean, I'm so grateful and thankful. Thank you for this therapy session.
No, I love it.
I really am. Like he's, he's amazing. He's such a supporter and caring and kind and insightful. And like, I mean, just having that support, of course, is so important for anyone going through anything that's.
Yeah. This or thank you, so sweet. This or anything else, and I think that we're also parents, and we're also parents to a special needs child.
That's a whole other thing. Speaking of like coming to terms with things, I mean, we also have a special needs, nonverbal, intellectual disability. He's 8 years old, and that's a whole other movie.
Yeah.
But or story.
But whether you have a special needs child or even just a child of there are always issues. I think that almost every parent can relate to those late night conversations where you put the kids to bed and it's like, okay, so what do we do? What can we do better? What can we do different?
Sure.
Just how can we? I mean, raising children, helping loved ones, it's always a work in progress. Every day you have to okay, what can I do better that I'm not doing? What resources are available that maybe we're not familiar with, especially with a special needs child, but with anyone. And I think that in many ways, those types of worries that most parents are familiar with, or just like daily life for a parent, became also the type of conversations we would have about Natalie's mother. Okay, now you have a loved one who, is and was, a supportive parent throughout all of your life, and now suddenly the tables have turned, and now suddenly she's in a position where she needs support. Very similar to the conversations about children. What do you do when you don't have the resources or you can't really help someone? What can we do different? What can we do that we haven't thought about? What resources are available? So having those kinds of conversations, I feel like even when you don't find solutions, just having someone to talk to, just having someone to share worries or thoughts with, and just is that's it's extremely valuable as you go through life with anything, even with your own private concerns if you don't have children. So I think that in that sense, the support system of a partner or anyone is invaluable as possible.
And some people, I mean, this is reminding me of stories that people reached out and said that they just couldn't deal with the situation that of their loved one, and they just cut off contact or stop the relationship over time. But then again, they would go back to it and get sucked in, and they're still tormented by the fact that their loved one is still, has this condition. So I feel like it's even, everyone does things differently and reacts differently, but it's no matter what you do, whether you stop contact or keep trying interventions or whatever it is, it's devastating for both people, and support systems are really the best thing that could help your mental sanity.
Yeah. The idea of just having a teammate, and even if it's not like a romantic partner, maybe it's just a friend and somebody that's in your circle that you can be that for somebody. I think, kind of my charge as, somebody who works for NAMI is to make an encouragement to those of you who maybe in this season are maybe in a time where there's not a whole lot of like chaos happening for you and things are kind of riding pretty great. Guarantee you there's somebody in your circle who that's not happening to. And so how can you make the space now in your life where things are pretty great by, most regards, and be intentional in pouring into those relationships. And you don't always have to have the right words, but just a check in, or a how are you doing. It doesn't have to be a grandiose, hey, I've bought you flowers and let me buy you steak. There's so much good that comes from those little pieces of, hey, I see you, or I'm noticing things are not great for you right now. What does that look for like for you guys outside of your marriage, in your relationship with friends, on like a day-to-day tangible way, to give some kind of insight, or maybe some best practice to those that are watching that would be helpful? I mean, obviously, Natalie, you can speak from a mental health professional standpoint. What would you kind of have a takeaway there?
I would say it really, like, don't make the mistake that I made, and don't keep it in, and don't hold it all in yourself. Open up, whether like it's to a friend, like you said, or to a loved one, or to anybody. Just you can't bottle things up, and you can't always fix things on your own. So sharing your story with anybody, and recognizing that you won't be judged because somebody is always going through something. So even if it's not the same thing, I think that a lot of times the judgment and the stigma stops people from opening up and sharing their own struggles. And so just getting past that, which is easier said than done, but
Right.
recognizing that you may also help somebody else by sharing your own story.
And on the flip side of that, like you said, being available to other people and letting other people know that you're available to as a resource, or even just as an ear, even if you can't
Yeah.
offer any help, just to hear someone out. And Natalie actually does that a lot. I think that she does it so routinely that she maybe doesn't even recognize her role with friends, not as a mental health professional, but just as a friend. Even though your friends also know that you have the tools, but so many friends just call and they just need to share. And she's always there as to lend an ear and hear what problems they're dealing with. Sometimes she can offer help, whether it's from her mental health background or just as a friend. And sometimes you can't really help people with problems that are even they can't really help themselves. But there's a feeling that just by virtue of listening to them and letting them speak about something, they feel like it helped them. It helped them just to share it. So like you said, I mean, letting people know, asking how are you in an intentional, meaningful way, and not a casual way, and really and when you sense that someone is struggling with something, trying to see how you can help them, and really, as you said, very often just listening. We take it for granted that listening to someone is just it seems like a passive thing to do, but in reality, very often you help them more than you realize, just by them feeling they're not entirely alone in what they're going through, but someone else is now aware of it and cares to try to at least think of some way out of it.
And sometimes like somebody objective too, because it's very hard for families sometimes to listen to assess. Sometimes it could be repetitive, or they, how many times I have to listen to you sharing.
Yeah.
So just opening up to somebody else, and somebody picking the right person, of course, just like you have to do with a therapist.
Sure.
But picking the right person to open up to and just talking sometimes can help. It's so funny because like there's all these techniques in therapy, but at the end of the day, sometimes people just got to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we have to also learn to give grace to people when they don't respond in the way that we wanted them to. And having those kind of conflict resolution conversations of, hey, I was being I think there's a self-awareness to saying, hey, I was coming to you because I was in a moment, or I needed whatever. And whenever you blew me off, or whenever you were just short with your response, what that did was teach me that you're not a safe person to come to. And I need to either one, reconcile that and realize that maybe that's not what your intention was. Can you help me with that? And there's a lot of vulnerability to say, I needed something from you and I didn't get it. And I don't think we all the time have the capacity to put ourselves out there when we already feel like we were shunned in the first place. Human relationships are hard.
Yeah, right?
Yes, they are.
It's not easy. This experience is, and I think the life that we all live, still in a pandemic. California is very different than Texas is right now. You guys are still pretty locked down, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a new strain. I think also like in Europe now, there's a new strain. So there's talk about
maybe in India, and now my family is in Israel, and now there's this second wave, it seems like, emerging in Israel. So absolutely, and I'm actually glad you brought up COVID, because I feel like that affected mental health on a colossal level.
And we haven't even seen it yet, probably, all the effects and all the, disorders that are going to come out of this, because.
Yeah. But if there's anything positive that came out of it, maybe a little bit more awareness that people maybe felt a little bit more ready to open up and talk about the fact that they're dealing with mental health issues, because it kind of seemed like, for the first time, everyone was going through a crisis together. And
it's like group therapy of the world.
Yeah.
So together with even though it also created a lot of chaos and divide, it also seemed like in some instances it created unity and people acknowledging we're all in this together, which is not something that usually you see outside of, NAMI circles.
Yeah. And everybody, I hate that we have taken a pandemic and turned it into us pitting ourselves against each other, the way that we have responded to it. And then we've decided, oh, these are my people because they have lived this way through it or afterwards. And I think everybody's kind of just done the best that they can, depending on their own physical health or their own pre-existing conditions or whatever it is. We've forgotten to give each other grace. And we've forgotten that at the end of the day, I don't think most of us are out to get each other. We're just doing the best we can with what we know to do and react in crises, mental health, global pandemic, or otherwise. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways from the movie that doesn't even necessarily have to be about how do you care for a loved one in a crisis is, can we just be kind to each other?
So important. And I think that it's the growing in empathy, it definitely extends far beyond just mental health. Just having the understanding that everyone's going through a journey that is probably most likely, unless you know that person really well, their journey is most likely invisible to you. Like you said about about your friend who's talking about how when you're going through a mental health problem, it's not visible as it is with a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Similarly, you never really know what someone else's journey is, what they're coping with in their personal lives, in their inner lives, and just having that empathy and recognizing that you don't quite know, so be kind.
So, and sometimes forgiveness too, and I think that goes together with it. So if somebody treats you a certain way, to not respond in that way, just forgiving. That maybe they're really going or something.
Sure. And I think there's boundaries too. I think, one of the things that I'm learning in my own life is this idea of forgiveness doesn't have to mean I re-enter that relationship in the same way. Like I can have an emotional boundary that says, while I'm not going to hold over your head the thing that you've done, I still don't like that relationship moving forward just needs to look different for my own mental capacity. And I think that it's okay to figure out what are boundaries that Natalie needs, what are boundaries that Elizabeth needs, and then feeling secure in those, because some people we're always going to be challenged with those, and we can ebb and flow as we get older and as our circumstances change. And what are we about? Giving ourselves the permission to really live that out is, I don't know. It's interesting being in my 30s, trying to be like, well, wait a minute. This is not how I've lived.
Yeah.
But okay, let's have a bit of a pivot.
But I really agree. Like at the end of the day, it comes down to communication and just sharing, okay, well, what is it that you need from the other person, and what are you willing to give, and just the talking about it rather than just the shutting down and turning away. And then the resentment that builds up there. So I do think that even like with my mom, like she would be like, I first of all didn't know that text messages there can be an arrow and it goes on to another page, and that's how long they were. So that was one thing that like you would press, like when the text message is long, you'd press it and then it would go on to another page and open up into another text message. It would be
Is this an iPhone thing?
Yes, I guess.
Oh, okay. I have an Android. Okay.
Oh, okay, well then
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they're endless. So that was something, for example, of like we had an understanding, okay, well, they need to be shorter because it's very hard to deal with, long messages and just all
with
these
a Russian novel
So-
worth of information. Yeah.
So, and sometimes it was just being a Jewish mom. Like, so it wasn't even stuff that had to do with the neighbor necessarily, but
That's so funny.
but yeah, so I mean, I think that like a lot of our relationship, we tried to communicate, okay, this is how I'm feeling when this happens, and she would, talk about her feelings. So as a result, that kind of brought us closer.
Uh-huh.
But I can, like, if I, like, going back to what we said, we didn't have the support system in the first place of, oh, well, how should I handle this, rather than just, blowing up,
Yeah.
then situations could be handled, differently. But it's, I think communication and support and those kinds of things really help.
And I think that the point that you made now is especially important to people who are naturally helpers. And I think the character in the movie, the daughter, is also naturally a helper and trying to help her mom, as she does when she falls into a relationship with a boy who has an addiction problem, and she finds herself trying to help him. And as much as you always want to fix people around you and solve their problems, sometimes you need to recognize that you can't, and sometimes you don't have the capacity to do that. And that is a liberating thought to some helpers who feel like they must carry the burden of the world on their shoulders, because they're the only ones who would do it, because they love other people and care for them and are willing to make sacrifices. But sometimes that burden is too much, and it can be and they can collapse under the weight of that burden. So I think that and so many people I think were involved in NAMI too, naturally are helpers. And for many of those people, it seems like, there are no boundaries. I'll just try to help wherever I can. But sometimes the burden of the helper is crushing.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel like what we need to do is we just need to have this conversation again, but not about the movie, but just about mental health and kindness and the human experience. And so I definitely, I'm going to circle back with you guys after this, because you guys are just like this wealth of incredible information and kindness and leading from the front in such a genuine way. And I just appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for really creating such a lovely conversation that's so insightful about this. And it's really, the best outcome of making a movie like this is being able to have meaningful, deep, compassionate conversations about the subject matters that far transcend the film and the plot of the story, and are relatable to everyone going through life.
Yeah. And I don't want to, in our last 10 minutes, I really want to make sure that we do this. So I watched the film last night, and then I finished it this morning because I have kids and y'all have kids, and sometimes you don't get an hour and 49 minutes to sit down and watch something. So we broke it up into 2 parts. And in doing so, the Champagner, right?
Yes.
Have been, they've been so kind to allow us to do a Zoom screening of this for y'all. And so as we iron out those details, would you like to share a little bit about what that would look like for our NAMI Greater Houston supporters? And then we will launch those specific details after the fact.
Of course, yeah. We will make a copy of the film available for a free screening to NAMI members of Greater Houston, and we really hope that people, especially as we said before, it was important for us to share the movie with general audiences, but especially people who are familiar with what mental health challenges are. So we're happy to share the film with people. Even though it's available online now for pay, we feel like, especially for people who are who can relate to it, we wanted to make this movie available to make sure that as many people watch it, and then they can spread the word or share it with others that they feel the movie could be either helpful to or just interesting to watch. So we'll figure out the details, and I'm sure share them with everyone who's interested.
And there's a great discussion guide that will follow that. Like I said, that's already online. We'll link that as well from NAMI National. And just when I was speaking with the Champagners before we got started, this idea of my dream for that would be that individuals in Houston and beyond will watch that. They will take pieces that resonate with them, and then they will carry that forward. You don't have to have, I'm not somebody who is the daughter of somebody who struggles with paranoia, right? But there are so many ways that I can now look at somebody in the grocery store or look at somebody at Target or Chick-fil-A or wherever, In-N-Out Burger for my Californians. Are you In-N-Out or are you Shake Shack?
No, In-N-Out. In-N-Out.
I've never been to Shake Shack and we have both here. Never mind. That was an aside. I apologize. The point is, let us all come together for our united love of cheeseburgers and animal style fries. But also a commitment to, in our own circles, just taking that next step of empathy. Even if we don't understand it, we're willing to give a couple of hours of our day, our morning, our evening, or whatever, to watch this movie and then be impacted by it to impact, social change for mental illness. So is there anything, where can we reach you besides Paper Spiders, the movie, on Instagram? What is the best way to get a hold of you guys and just share the way that we've been impacted by this film?
Also on Facebook and Twitter, and I mean we're through all the all social media.
On Amazon,
handles.
people leave reviews on their thoughts about the movie. So we can see how people responded, reacted. There's a Facebook page, so we're
and we respond to anyone who writes to the the Paper Spiders page.
Everybody no one is ignored, and nobody that has a question or writes a message in the inbox. They will be responding.
And so many messages have been about mental health, with people sharing their stories, and I see a lot of messages that you respond to people, and it's almost feels like therapy sessions.
It is. They are. I mean, it's like movie aside sometimes. Like let's talk about this. So everything is welcome, whatever however people are affected.
And it makes us grateful, having had the experience of when you make a movie, knowing that it actually made an impact on someone and that it meant something to them, and it resonated with them and touched them on a personal level. Is very, very gratifying. You put, so many years and work of your life into making a movie, and very often, projects just don't necessarily connect with people. And when something connects with people so deeply, and people say, "This is my story. This really touched me," it's very meaningful to the filmmaker. So we're also grateful when we hear back from people.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Unlike when we do Hollywood action films, I mean, there's nothing that's going to resonate. It's just pure 1.5 hour entertainment. But this movie, hopefully, by being a piece of life and people can relate to on a personal level, will resonate with people.
Well, it resonated with this Texan. Well, I'm a Kansan that lives in Texas. That's neither here nor there. And I appreciate the hard work that you put into it. Your cast was great. And I am looking forward to what else we can do from NAMI Greater Houston together, what next films you guys have coming up, and just an encouragement to you guys that the way that you are committed to living your life and sharing stories and being authentic and transparent, just bravo to you. I know that I sent you an email earlier, but you're doing the thing and living with authenticity that I don't think you can fake that. And so I just appreciate your heart behind the movie, and I look forward to this screening and getting to spend some more time with you guys.
Thank you. And we're really grateful to you. Thank you for this conversation, for giving us an opportunity to share thoughts about the movie and about bigger things with you, and for all the insights that you shared. Really grateful for the support.
Thank you so
much. Well, we're going to have them back because whether they committed or not, I just love conversations like this with a dream team of excellence like y'all. So we'll be back next Tuesday as we kick off Minority Mental Health Month. And so we thank you guys for helping us end June's focus on community education and advocacy, which you did. I cannot think of a better way to end that series. We'll be back next week with Joshua Castro, who's going to share as well. And thank you so much. And we will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Bye.